Ralph, you record?
Okay,
Ralph,
Justin, how are you
right?
tonight?
Yes, sir.
I'm
Justin?
good.
I'm
Yes.
great. Oh, great. That's good. Good to see you.
too.
As you know, I just want to introduce myself. My name is Paula Fields Conyers. I'm the chairperson of the Housing Land Use Committee, and you are currently a presenter on the agenda, so you can start whenever you are ready.
Ralph, could you pull up the first presentation? Thank you. So hello, everyone. I'm Justin Lamorella, Senior Borough Planner from the Department of City Planning in the Bronx office, for those of you who don't know me. I'm joined tonight by Sean Brady from DCP, as well as Rachel Cohen and Charvis Gonzalez from the MTA. And tonight we're presenting a proposed zoning text amendment called Zoning for Accessibility, which is a citywide proposal that would use zoning as a tool to increase accessibility in the transit system. So a zoning text amendment, which as many of you know, it's essentially an update to the text rules of the zoning resolution itself. This proposal does have citywide implications, and because of that, it was referred to every community board in the city as of April 5th. We are inviting recommendations on this proposal, and we hope that the discussion tonight can help better your understanding of the proposal itself. So with that, I'll hand it off to Rachel from the MTA, who will walk us through some of the background. I'll jump in to explain the zoning piece of it, and then at the end, we're happy to answer any questions. So with that, Rachel.
Great. Thanks, Justin, for that introduction. And thanks, everyone, for your time and for having us this evening. I'm Rachel Cohen. I'm the Director of System-Wide Accessibility for New York City Transit. So my team works on accessibility initiatives across subways and buses. So we're particularly excited to be partners with the Department of City Planning on the Zoning for Accessibility initiative. If you go to the next slide. So, as Justin mentioned, Zoning for Accessibility is a proposed amendment to the zoning resolution that would have citywide implications. And we're here tonight to present Zoning for Accessibility for your questions, your feedback, and we hope the support of Bronx CB2 as we move forward with the public review process. So what Zoning for Accessibility would do is give the MTA more opportunities to engage with the real estate development community to advance our goal of making the subway and commuter rail systems across the city fully accessible. It's really important to note that Zoning for Accessibility is intended to be an additional tool in the MTA's toolbox as we work toward the system-wide accessibility goal, not in any way a replacement or a substitute for the MTA's capital investment. Zoning for Accessibility is really about leveraging development that's happening around our city to advance us toward our accessibility goals more quickly. The proposal has two main provisions, which you can see at the bottom of this slide. The provision that's actually listed second here is an expansion of the existing transit improvement bonus provision in the zoning text. That actually does not apply to this community board, so we're not going to discuss it at length tonight. That transit improvement bonus, if this resolution passes, would apply in much of Manhattan, Long Island City, Jamaica, downtown Brooklyn, and some of the South Bronx, but does not include CB2 given the density in this community board. Now, what would apply to Bronx Community Board 2 is the citywide easement expansion. And this is a proposal to, again, expand an existing provision that helps the MTA get easements in properties that are located near subway stations and commuter rail stations in the city. And these easements allow the MTA to complete capital projects more quickly, more cost effectively, and to create better accessible routes into our stations by partnering with private developers. And we'll get into a little bit more detail of that as we go. Next slide, please. So, this is probably information that's familiar to a lot of folks on this board, but just to reiterate, why is something like Zoning for Accessibility needed? So at the MTA, we have infrastructure across the city that's often 100 years old or more. Most of our stations, are 50 or more years old. And we're making a lot of progress toward making the system accessible, but we have a tremendous amount of work left to do. Last year, we completed 11 new ADA station projects in the middle of a global pandemic, which is really an incredible achievement, a testament to our construction team. But we have a long way to go. We have hundreds of stations left to be made accessible. The MTA is committed to that goal, and we're putting, historic investment toward it. But we're really looking for every, tool in the toolbox to advance us toward making our subway and commuter rail systems more accessible. Now, when we say an accessible station generally, that includes the whole suite of ADA features, not just elevators, but also tactile warning strips, braille signs, induction loops for folks who use hearing aids. But this particular piece we're talking about tonight, zoning for accessibility, really is about vertical access. It's about getting elevators in particular, and sometimes ramps, into our stations. And on the next slide, why is that so important? I'm sure, many, if not everybody on this call has faced this challenge before, right? Elevators are not just, and vertical access is not just for customers who use wheelchairs or other mobility devices. Accessible transit benefits parents of young children like myself who are, taking our kids around the city in strollers, often on our own. Seniors, the rapidly growing aging population across New York City, people with temporary injuries, and also, folks carrying luggage, bicycles. An accessible transit system has so many widespread benefits. And that's why, things like the proposal we're talking about tonight, we think are so important and have such potential. On the next slide, just, a few numbers in terms of the potential benefits of a more accessible transit system. Just looking in the Bronx, out of the 1.4 million residents of this borough, there are over 100,000 residents who identify as having an ambulatory disability, as well as another 100,000 residents under 5. And again, as I mentioned, the large and growing senior population in the Bronx and all across New York City. So, we think that vertical access really is a key feature of an accessible, welcoming, successful transit system. And that's what we're really focused on and working on here. Next slide. So, as I mentioned up front, zoning for accessibility, any transit improvements that we get through the zoning initiative, which Justin's going to speak about in a minute, would all be in addition to and complementary to the MTA's capital plan. So our 2020 to 24 capital program includes over $5 billion of dedicated funding to make more than 70 additional stations accessible. And despite COVID and the setbacks of COVID, we are on our way. As I mentioned, we opened 11 new accessible stations last year. We awarded more than 10 new projects, which means we have contractors starting, the actual work on those projects. Through an incredibly difficult year, we really made a lot of progress. And we have funding in this capital plan. We're optimistic with the federal situation right now that we're going to be able to move forward and accelerate the pace of this work going forward. And our intention is absolutely, to kind of keep our foot on the gas pedal, continue with the MTA's accessibility work, move toward our goal of more geographic equity and coverage when it comes to accessible stations, and use tools like zoning for accessibility to add more stations, get us to that goal faster. And then the next slide is going to be my last slide before I pass it over to Justin to transition to more of the details of what is zoning for accessibility. So I mentioned that the key provision for this board is this easement provision. And an easement, is a small set aside piece of a property that would be held, and there is a legal agreement so that if and when the MTA decides to make that station accessible, we can take advantage of that easement area to create an optimal accessible pathway. And this is really critical because vertical access, and particularly siting elevators, is often one of, if not the biggest challenges to making an existing subway station accessible, right? We have to deal with existing utility infrastructure. As you see on this slide, narrow platforms, not a lot of options for where you can safely land an elevator. A lot of elevated stations, including some in this district, where you have a station over narrow sidewalks. So part of the goal of zoning for accessibility, and particularly the easement provision, is to give us more options and find more places where we can put elevators in the system so that we can create, ideal, direct, and safe and easy to use routes, accessible routes through our station for our customers. So with that, that's kind of, the big picture, why we're here, what this initiative is all about. And I'll turn it back over to Justin to go through some of the details. Thank you.
Thank you. Next slide, please. So today there are tools in the zoning resolution to support the construction of transit improvements, but they only apply in certain areas of the city, none of which are in the Bronx, and none of which, of course, are in Community District 2. Also, the zoning resolution does not currently have a consistent citywide approach for facilitating improvements such as elevators on development sites around transit stations. And so as a result, there have been missed opportunities for the MTA to locate ADA access at the best locations on development sites next to a station. You can see in this photo on the screen of an example of a new building that went up and precluded an elevator from ever being placed on that site. Next slide, please. So the main component of this proposal is a system-wide easement consultation requirement. But first I want to talk about what is an easement. So an easement, again, I know this was already said, but an easement, again, is a legal right to use another's land for a specific limited purpose. So in other words, it's a small permanent space reserved in a building for, in this case, the transit agency to use in the future. And what this proposal does is say that all developments and enlargements on certain zoning lots greater than 5,000 square feet and within 50 feet of mass transit stations would need to file an application with the MTA and the chair of the City Planning Commission. And this chair certification process would determine whether an easement on the zoning lot is needed in order to make station access improvements, such as elevators, happen in the future. The zoning districts where this applies are higher density residential and commercial districts and all manufacturing districts. For Community District 2, that applies to all lots within 50 feet of a transit station. For sites that are smaller than 5,000 square feet or where conversions are proposed, the requirement would not apply. Providing an easement on these sites would be voluntary. So it's important to keep in mind with this that while the process of obtaining a certification would be required for these sites, the MTA will only ask for an easement in optimal locations for future transit access. So in other words, the process to talk to the MTA is their requirement. Next slide, please. So the map here shows the areas in Community District 2 where this easement consultation requirement would take effect. So it's all of those areas that are lots that are within 50 feet of each train station along your transit lines. Next slide, please. In the event that the MTA does seek an easement on the subject property, there are some forms of relief from certain zoning rules that would be provided to minimize potential challenges for construction on a site. Without any zoning relief, easements can cause some challenges for development, and this is important to address because failure to do so would make it very difficult for the transit agency to acquire the easement. So to address this issue, the text amendment proposes zoning relief in a few categories that are listed on this slide, things like floor area and open space, height and setback, parking, use, and streetscape. Next slide, please. So just to talk about what this easement certification process would look like. So first, there'd be a development or enlargement within 50 feet of a station envelope proposed. The developer would file an application with the MTA and the CPC chair requesting a certification as to whether an easement is needed. Then the MTA and the CPC would have 60 days to decide if an easement is needed. If it's decided that one is not, then the MTA CPC chair would issue a letter certifying that no easement is required and the developer is released from the easement requirement. If it's decided that easement is needed, then the MTA, in consultation with the developer and the CPC chair, determines the easement type and dimensions. And then the developer would submit a site plan for approval and final certification by the MTA and the CPC chair. And then finally, the MTA and the chairperson comment on the site plan within 45 days and permit the granting of an excavation permit. Next slide, please. So this proposal was referred out to all 59 community boards for 60 days. After the 60-day referral period, which includes community boards, borough presidents, and borough boards, the proposal will go back to the City Planning Commission before going to the City Council and the Mayor's office this fall. And we are seeking a letter of support for this proposal. Next slide, please. So just to conclude, the zoning for accessibility text amendment proposes coordination of transit station improvements with new developments on sites near transit stations. As part of that, a consultation process would be required of all developments and enlargements on applicable zoning lots within 50 feet of mass transit stations. Where easements are needed, targeted relief from certain zoning rules would be provided to such developments in order to minimize potential challenges for construction on a site. So with that, again, we are seeking a letter of support, but we're happy to answer any questions at this point.
Okay, so thank you so much for that presentation. I don't see any hands up. Do you see hands up, Ralph?
I do.
Yeah.
No hands. I don't know who has questions though.
Oh,
Well,
okay.
in the
Well, I have
chat,
a question.
we have Monica from Assembly Member Burgo's office asking a question in the chat.
Okay, so I'd like to ask a question, then we'll get to Monica. Justin, in just layman terms, could you give me an example of what you're talking about? Has anything happened in the community, city, where you can give an example of what you're talking about so that we can get a clear picture, or I can get a clear picture?
Yeah, I'd actually ask the MTA if they have a good recent example of maybe where you've been able to work with a developer to locate an elevator.
So I'm trying
Sure,
to figure
so-
out what's the difference between this proposal and just MTA doing an elevated station, because that's what we're talking about, the accessibility, right? So what's the difference
Yes.
between them actually now putting a new elevator in the station as opposed to what you're proposing? What's the difference?
Absolutely. So this is Rachel from the MTA. Let me take a crack at that. And Justin and Charby, please, then chime in. So, the easement is a set aside. Think of an easement as like a small set aside piece of a property that has a legal obligation attached to it. So, for example, if a developer comes in a couple years and is building a new property right next to the Whitlock Avenue subway station, just taking an example on this map, and they're within the distance, under the zoning code, and the property is of a big enough size that's covered under this provision, as part of their planning process, before they could pull permits from Department of Buildings, they would come to the MTA, they would have a consultation with the MTA and Department of City Planning, look at initial plans for the site, and we at the MTA would have the ability to say, we think that we could in the future site an elevator like in this, little sliver of your property. So we're going to ask for an easement so that, when we come back in the future, when we have a funded capital project to make this station accessible, we can use that easement basically as part of the area in which we can construct the elevator. So you're absolutely right that this is, closely tied to the MTA's own capital projects to make stations accessible. But what easements and properties allow us to do is basically have more options, and often, frankly, better options of where we can site elevators. And as we showed on one of the slides, that can be particularly useful, where we have narrow sidewalks, or, a lot of infrastructure around the station, underground near the station. It gives us, another opportunity, another option of where we can put that elevator. And we believe, will help us get more projects done more quickly, more economically. And there are examples of where this has happened around the city, but there aren't that many of them. So the goal of zoning for accessibility basically is to make more projects like this possible in the future. So we do have a number of easement entrances all across the city, some that have existed, for decades and decades, where building owners wanted a subway entrance in their building. So as they were building, they said, hey, please put stairs directly into the subway in our building. Most of those entrances predate the ADA, so they don't have elevators. They're just, stairs, and you've probably seen these, around the city, a stairway entrance that sort of is part of a private building facade that goes into the subway. When those entrances are updated, they have to, now that we have the Americans with Disabilities Act, the building owner has to make that entrance accessible. So there are a number of accessible subway entrances in private building envelopes around the city. 28th Street on the Lexington Avenue in Manhattan is a good recent example, or the elevator to the Hoyt Skimmerhorn station in downtown Brooklyn, if you happen to be familiar with that station. So we do have a number of these throughout the city. But as I said, the goal of this proposal is that as we work to make more and more stations, and especially more stations in the outer boroughs accessible, that we'll have more, more opportunities and more good solutions to do that.
So Rachel, it's funny that you mentioned Whitlock, because there's a project that's supposed to be coming, a housing development that's supposed to be coming in that area. So if that proposed lot is 50, you said 50 feet away from the train station, the developer can make entrance of the building go to the train station? Is that what you're saying?
So, yeah, so
Rachel,
if the
go ahead. I'm sorry. I can piggyback when you.
okay, no, go ahead, and I can add.
Well, what I was going to say is that this is a new proposal, assuming that this proposal is passed and implemented, and that building, because this is only applicable to new developments, and it met the square footage requirement and what have you, then it would be eligible if it's within 50 feet and it's the chosen location. When I say the chosen location, I refer to engineering wise, is it the best option for us? Within 50 feet, hypothetically speaking, we may have more than one option, but we will only select the ideal option. So in the scenario that you put forward, if we, let's assume that we already passed ZFA, it's accepted, it's implemented, and then the building was coming online, when they file for their permits, they would have to reach out to us, and we would either say yay or nay. We need, not yay or nay, maybe that's a poorly chosen wording, but we would either say, yes, we're interested in having further dialogue and figuring out what that elevator would look like and what relief is available, if any, to this given property. I hope that answers your question.
Somewhat, Mr. Gonzalez. What I'm trying to get is whose responsibility would it be to pay for that? Is it MTA or the developer?
MTA.
Okay.
These are yes, opportunities to facilitate MTA projects.
Okay, and that doesn't have any correlation with the fare going up anytime when you have this opportunities, will it? You don't know.
From any fares and any budgetary decisions that are made down the road. This is more so a tool in our arsenal to make the system accessible and to have our customers never be more than 2 stations away from an elevator.
Okay.
In addition,
and this is also really about capital projects, the long-term system investment, and the fare, is more about sort of the operating day-to-day expenses.
Okay, thank you so much for answering those questions. I just wanted clarity. So was the young lady named Monica who wanted a question in chat, or was it Monique? Cynthia, I'm sorry.
Monica.
Hi,
Monica.
good evening, everyone. How's everyone doing?
Hello.
Hello. Thank you for having me in this meeting. I believe that I had a meeting with the MTA, also the transportation, a couple of months back, and I did address the situation within the Whitlock. We're talking about the 6th train line, all the way towards Parkchester. We don't have any elevators. We don't have any type of accessories for our disability, our senior.
I'll take this question. Monica, was it? I'm sorry.
That's right. My name is Monica
Hi,
Monzon.
Monica. This is
Yes.
Charvy. So I'm the Bronx representative. I represent the Bronx as a whole. So, just moving forward, you have my contact details. I think I included in the chat, but in any event. So in terms of the 6th line that you've identified on the chat, I put the list of 70 stations that were identified in the 2020 to 2024 capital plan. There are actually 6 stations identified on the 6th line for ADA accessibility. So you can take a look at that.
Okay.
And we can totally have a follow-up conversation if you like.
Will do. I'll email you and then I'll get back to you. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
Is there anyone else who has questions?
Yes, Paula, I do.
Yeah, the chairman, I'm sorry. Chairman Crespo's been waiting patiently.
How you doing, everybody? And thank you, Paula and Ralph, for putting this thing together and getting this presentation together. And Justin, when we first started, I said, I hope you're ready to answer some questions. So here we go. You just finished stating, the young lady, Charvy just finished stating that they're going to try and make accessibility elevator wise, no more than 2 stops away from any person that might be handicapped. That creates a problem. And the first problem is that most here in Board 2, that you're talking about maybe close to 8 to 10 blocks between these 2 stops. And for a person to travel, and if they're handicapped, to travel that in order to get a train becomes a problem for this board. I would believe. As semi-handicapped, I know that it creates a problem. I know some of my board members are semi-handicapped or handicapped, and that would also create a problem. So for Board 2, I would think that you would need, I see the map that you got in front of me, but I don't believe that those are all locations that we're talking about that will get the accessibility. Am I correct?
So not all in this current capital plan, right? So of stations in this community board, the next project that's planned is East 149th Street, which is going to be one of our next, is actually a project that has already started. But you're absolutely right? That having folks be no more than 2 stations away from an accessible station is not a long-term solution for an accessible transit system. Our goal is a fully accessible system, but we can't do that all in one capital planning cycle, one 5-year plan. So the goal for this current 5-year plan is that 2-away goal, so that we have more accessible stations, more equitably distributed across the city. Our long-term goal is all the stations, and zoning for accessibility, as we've said, we think can help get us there faster.
So you're saying that, hello?
I'm sorry, go ahead. Proceed.
So what you're saying is that it's going to take 5 years to do this one particular station at 49th Street within the 5-year plan.
In the current 5-year plan, one of the upcoming stations is the East 149th Street, and obviously, as is our custom, we'll approach the board once we have details to share to that end. But just looking at this map, it looks like this current 2020 to 2024 capital plan would put us in the realm of customer not being 2 stations away. We don't view the system, right? New York City Transit does not view the system as just subway or just buses, but we look at it through one lens as a whole. And 100% of our fleet of buses is currently accessible. So to that end, I would say that while it may not be ideal, the 2-station goal at this particular juncture, we do have the buses that are accessible, and this capital plan is by no means the end-all be-all. And in future capital plans, there'll be accessibility needs addressed.
I understand that, Charlie, but what I'm trying to say is that 149 is within the first 5-year cycle, right? And so we have a lot of handicap, a lot of seniors, and I understand about the buses. I understand what you're saying, but it just makes traveling. What I'm basically saying on this point is that it makes traveling a lot harder than in most cases. Like Simpson right now has an elevator. We know that, okay? Whether it works or not is a different story. And then going south from Simpson, going southeast from Simpson, it would be 149th Street, and that's on the number 6 line. Am I correct?
Seems about right.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, what I'm just basically saying on this point is just that it's making transportation a little harder than people are. I mean, we're getting something, which makes it a little easier. But in the heart of the district, yeah, I mean, if you look at, I mean, we have Hunts Point that has an elevator, Simpson has elevator, but we have people that live over towards Intervale and Prospect. And I'm only talking for Board 2. I'm not talking for any of the other community boards. I'm just talking about Board 2, as I know the geographics and the way the community looks. We have a lot of seniors in the Intervale area and Prospect, which brings me to my next question. And Intervale, you have an escalator that's there. Are you removing the escalator that's there when you put up this elevator?
So
Well,
any station design decision would be station by station, and we haven't done like a detailed design scheme for Intervale Avenue. But as a general principle, you know, if we're making an accessibility improvement to a station, we're adding an elevator, it would be, you know, in addition to access points that already exist. I mean, depending on the configuration, you know, sometimes things need to move, stairways get moved, but we would continue to have, you know, other ways of accessing the station in general.
Well,
And I think to the chairman's point, it would be nice to know. I mean, you're looking for our support. It would be nice to know if any of our stations are going to be affected. I think it'll defeat the purpose if Community Board 2 lends its support and we receive no improvements. I mean, I think it would be nice to know if we're getting any of these stations that are in the plans. You already talked about the budget earlier. Right, so there's going to be improvements made. Are we included in that preliminary budget?
Well, more than a preliminary budget in the 2020-24 capital plan. Let me just pull it up real quickly, and I shared it in the chat. On the just generally speak, I guess 149th is the one in your district, but on the capital plan itself, there's Brook and Mashulu along the 6. Typically, the way we approach this is once a contract has been onboarded and we have details to share, we set up meetings with the transportation committee and then do a full board presentation. So as those details emerge and become available, you can look forward to those presentations.
Thank you.
thank you.
Sorry, Mr. Chair.
Just real quick, Mr. Crespo, to your previous point, by no means is this like, I guess, like a blueprint to move forward. This is, as I think we've said on a couple of occasions, this is more a tool on our proverbial tool belt that would allow us moving forward to take advantage of new developments that are within the 50-foot proximity, and really does lend itself to improving the system and making it more accessible to more people. While I do truly appreciate your points in terms of you know, what the 2024 capital plan contains, you know, this is not the end of accessibility by any stretch of the imagination, and you know, under the leadership of Jano Lieber, we expect great things and more to come.
Thank you. But and now that you just said that, my last question is where you stated, you showed the plan there on each step of how to designate the stations, how it goes to no, I think it was after this. Yes, that one. The Eastman certification process. I appreciate all of that, you know, that you're making sure that every step is taken. However, I see that there's two functions not involved in this process that should be involved in this process, because it is the community that needs to understand what's going on, or at least plan it out with you. And that is the city council member or state legislator and the community board. There is nowhere, and there's nothing in this process that mentions any of those individuals. And I think that that's really not being a partner to the community. You're not letting us answer or at least put our concerns into this particular, into the Eastman certification.
Can we pull up the slide that shows not this one, that shows the process, I guess the overall process that does incorporate the city council, borough president, and what?
I understand that, but this is like now. This is like now. I'm talking about during the process, because during the process, you may see something, but it's not feasible to the community, or the elected officials will get the feedback from the community. Why are they doing this there? Why are they not why can't they do it over this? Or how can't they change this to go a different way than to go the way that it's going? So in other words, this process here, I understand, because it's a normal land use process. But I'm talking about afterwards, the process afterwards. After this goes through your process of going through CPC, going to MTA, going to the chair of the MTA. You're going to everybody, but you're not coming back to the community and saying, this is what we're doing in your community. How does this look to you, and how can we work with you on this?
Mr. Crespo, if I can, I guess divorce the two, I guess topics, or the two issues at hand here. It seems that they've been commingled, right? This here that we're looking at is the ZFA process. How we intend, or the process to go forward with attaining ZFA rights, right, for the MTA and planning and city planning. So that's one thing. And what I'm looking to divorce that from is the process where we seek input from the community once we've identified a location for an elevator. Then we go to your transportation committee if it's within the confines of your district. Then we go on to the full board for input. So they're kind of two separate things. While this process here outlines what we, the steps to implementing ZFA, or ZFA becoming a thing. And then there's the other process once we've identified the siting of elevators and presenting it to the community board and the various committees that it touches on.
And I appreciate that, Jarvis, but it should be shown on your sketches of your steps, because if you're making other presentations to other boards, and I understand that this is a citywide land use issue, it's a lot of people just going to may say, okay, it's all right, and then down the road, nobody's going to listen, like it's happened before. Community boards may have concerns, but it's too late for the concerns, and we should be incorporated into the previous step that you were showing before. We should be involved in there, and it should be shown somewhere in there that you're going to come back to the community board, that you're going to talk to the transit committee, that you're going to sit with the community to talk about where these elevators should go. It's not being mentioned on your previous no?
Yeah.
Go back, go forward, I guess. Where you got the CPC and the MTA and all of that other stuff.
Right. I think the point that Mr. Crespo is making is that there is not a step in where we talk about the easement review process, right? You're talking, for each individual site easement, there's no way it's not subject to discretionary review by the community board on, each individual easement certification.
The only thing here that would affect us is Prospect Avenue, because if you're building every other station, we already have one at Hunts Point, and now you're doing East 149th Street. So that covers the 6 line. Then the 2 and the 5 line, we have one at Simpson Street. So if you're looking at every other one, the only train station in our board would be Prospect Avenue. So in theory, this is only going to affect us with Prospect Avenue, correct?
We hope not, actually. So, as we said, our long-term goal is to make all the stations in the system accessible. And something like zoning for accessibility, a zoning resolution amendment applies for the long term. So there could be somebody, developing a property 7 years from now at one of those stations that's right in between 2 accessible stations. And if we have an opportunity to get an easement at that station, we would look at it like any other. Our goal is that areas of the East Bronx, look exactly like Lower Manhattan, where the map's lit up and every station is accessible along the line. So I think, you're right, that in terms of our immediate targeting is not, for every station in every district, but we're really thinking about the long term here.
Okay.
Can I
And
say
just
something?
and just before you leave, the Prospect Station is divided between 3 boards, and so that becomes even a greater concern. Because they may say we want it one way, we say we want it a different way, and somebody else will say, board one will say I want it one way, board three will say I want it differently, and we could say it differently. But if you have us all there at the same time when you're planning this, then we can iron out the problems before it gets into a bigger problem.
Understood.
Can I say something?
Definitely noted, Mr. Crespo, and I will take that back.
Can I say something?
Yeah, Altagracia, just a second. I like the way you said noted because I think you've been speaking to Ralph stating that. But I understand what you're saying, and I'm really serious about this. I really have concerns about this plan, and in particularly your planning stages when you select a station. It's not being mentioned in your diagram, and it's not, and though you're saying it here, and I'm not saying that you would be lying to us, but how do we assure that it's going to be citywide, that you're going to be talking to all the community boards? Because other community boards may not have a problem, but we may have a problem, and we should be part of the process.
As standard practice, we approach every community board before we, once the details of ADA project or any other project that's forthcoming as it relates to this conversation, accessibility, we approach transportation committees and the full board on any board that it touches.
Okay, all right, duly noted.
The clarity.
I think you had
Is
something.
it, Altagracia?
Another question?
Yes,
Uh-huh.
Altagracia?
Yes. I got two concerns. The first and bigger concern is I think it was the chair got that discussion with the guys. So you know what? That's the one of the things sometimes I get mad with everybody. The component is supposed to do something for our community. Our community is big. We got a congressman, senator, city councilor, assemblyman. And why our community, they have to be like a miserable? A night staff from Longo and to Westchester Square, number 6 lane. They got only 1, 2, I think it's 2 or 3 elevators, that's it. And I remember a couple of years back when they put it in the news and show many train stations, they supposed to get the elevator because we got a lot of people in the community that they disabled. They have to go into the elevator. Why? And you go to other communities in Manhattan or out of the somewhere in Portland, you're gonna see those people. They got everything. It's nice. We only have to be like the Gavis, the last cup of the world. That's not right. We have to let these people know they have to respect our community and doing what they supposed to do. We don't have to ask them because they're working and they see what's wrong and what is right. They're supposed to demand it, and everybody can be happy. The second thing is about the street. The street, all the path and hole, they got it Internet, Westchester, Southern Boulevard, 163rd, and Longwood, different places. We got it, the big parking holes, and they sent them 2 weeks ago to fix it. And they take only one spoon of the black thing, put it in there in the hole. They leave in the hole in the middle and they keep it go. And I stop then and I say, you're not supposed to do that. You're supposed to do it even. And fooling all the hole, you're supposed to do it. And the one they got it in the floor with those guys working, you know what they told me? Oh, we're going to come back later. They only spend 1 hour over here in this area and they don't do nothing. They supposed to have somebody check us and see if they doing what they have to do. And after that, those people, they don't doing the right and defending our community, we're going to be miserable. Years and years ain't going to pass and we don't got nothing. Thank you.
Mrs. Cruz, I didn't really identify a question in there, but I did want to comment, I guess, on your commentary. So through the efforts of our 2020-2024 capital plan and ZFA, you know, we are attempting to achieve parity across our 400 plus stations throughout the system. And by you know, trying to get everyone within 2 stations in this capital program, I think that would go a long way to achieving that parity. I think your second point should probably be directed towards DOT. So I really can't speak to that.
But you
Thank you,
gotta,
John.
you can make a quest. You can tell them then that the communities accept for what's going on and they don't do it. You can do it that favor because all of you sitting together and talking.
Thank you, Charlie.
Thank you, Charlie, for your assistance in that area. Are there any more questions?
Paul, I think I saw Larry.
No.
Larry or Jeffrey, I think, was trying to talk because they kept getting unmuted.
Jeffrey, did you have something you wanted to say? Mr. Corn? Did you have
Jeffrey?
some- Wait.
He's still on mute. Ralph, unmute
still-
him.
Yeah, okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we hear you.
Yes, Jeff, go ahead.
I don't understand how it works out.
Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes, Jeff, go ahead.
All right. What you were saying is, at the planning stage, everybody, even before they decide to do anything, they should contact us and see what they're gonna do.
Yes, yes,
It's even before they even gets to the, am I right?
right, right. We should be in the process as they're
At
discussing.
minute 1.
Right, right.
Okay, so, who was next? Was it Larry who had a question?
No, no more questions.
Okay, all right, so this is a voting item, right?
So yeah, it's up to now the committee to decide on what to do here, Paula. Well, Larry has his hand raised now.
No, that's the error.
Okay, so Larry made an error. So now it's up to you guys. If you want to make a motion, you want to further discussion, it's up to you.
No, I'd like to make a motion to give city planning the letter of support for this accessibility, the easement accessibility project that they're talking about. Do I have a second?
I second it.
Okay.
Jeff Corn seconds.
Paula, can you just put down with a stipulation that in their planning stages, that they should be involving the community board and the elected officials?
Okay, just a second. All right.
So Paula, you got it second. I don't know if you want a further discussion.
Is there anyone who would like to further discuss the presentation or
You can go right into the vote then if you want.
Okay, so we're gonna go into the vote. So all of those who are in favor say aye.
Aye.
All of those who are not in support of the letter. How many members do I have here? Why is not everybody voting besides
You should have, Paul.
You had Paul, and I think he left. You, Paul, Altagracia, and so you right now you have just actually there's only 3 members. There's you, Altagracia, and Jeffrey Corn.
So we can't vote on it because it's not for quorum,
You
right?
don't have your quorum because Paul was here. I don't know if he's coming back on.
He's not coming back on. He has another meeting.
So now you, the chair, need to chairman to decide on what.
Paula, what we'll do is we'll take this to the exec committee and we'll vote on it at the exec.
Okay.
All right?
You're in the right place for this.
So at the exec committee, there won't be a need for a presentation. It'll be an
No.
item on the agenda. If
Right,
it
it
passes, Justin, the committee meets on the 24th. So I'll let you know Tuesday, the 25th, because the full board meets on Wednesday, the 26th. So I'll let you know if it passes that Monday night. And then we need someone present for the full board meeting, not to give the presentation, but to just to answer any questions.
It's nice to see you after all the time.
Yep, understood. I'll be there.
Jeffrey, you gotta mute yourself, Jeffrey, please.
Can you believe that? But it's already.
You're gonna have to mute him, Ralph.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'll follow up with you that Tuesday, Justin. Okay.
Hey, Justin, is that okay?
That works. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, everyone, for the presentation. Greatly appreciate it. And we'll get back to you on the executive committee's decision, okay? Next is
For your time and your questions.
Jeffrey, you gotta mute
that?
yourself, Jeffrey. Thank you.
Okay, so next is are they here, Ralph? The people
Honestly, I don't see anyone from Metropolitan Realty Exemption. I don't know if anyone is.
Is anyone
Ralph.
on the who?
Oh, sorry, Ralph. I still have the hotels presentation too.
Oh, so there's what's the hotels one?
The hotel special permit. Yep, that one that you just pulled up.
Okay. Wait a minute. This is a second zoning. So you only told me initially it was just going to be one. Now you want to do the second one also?
Yes, when we spoke yesterday, we talked about that I would have 2 presentations and we would keep them short.
Okay.
Was this already approved by CPC?
This was certified on Monday and referred to all community boards.
Ralph, have you had a chance to review this?
No, we just got it, but you guys, I mean, we heard the first one. We did have quorum. We didn't have quorum now for the vote. We don't have quorum now. So I don't know how you want to proceed with this one.
I don't think it'd be sensible to proceed because we need quorum to vote on it.
Right. In order to conduct business, you need quorum, and you don't have quorum.
So Ralph, I think is that though we say we don't want him, we don't need him for the executive committee, let him come at the executive committee and make the presentation there.
You want
Also, the
just this
executive committee
presentation? Just this presentation.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Okay. So Justin, we'll invite you to the executive on Monday. We'll invite city planning to the executive meeting on Monday, the 24th, to make this presentation.
Okay, that works for me.
Okay.
And that's
Okay.
Monday the 24th.
The 24th, yeah.
Okay.
6 p.m.
Okay.
So we're gonna move on then. On the agenda, Metropolitan Realty Exemption. I don't think there's anyone here representing them. Now, we received notifications from them on 3 buildings in the district stating that they were receiving HPD funding. So, of course, I quickly reached out to Ted. And Ted stated that they're receiving this PFACH and AIRS, which is a non-discretionary zoning bonus program. And I'm hoping that Ted can elaborate on what that program is before any discussions regarding Metropolitan Realty Exemption goes on. Ted?
Sure. I mean, I'm not an expert, but I'll tell you what I know. The zoning resolution includes a provision, AIRS. I always forget what it stands for, but basically it's to provide a bonus for senior housing. And so in order to accommodate that, so HPD had started a program, so to speak, PFASH. Actually, give me 1 second. I will tell you what it stands for, just so you know, because it makes more sense if you know what it stands for. Okay, PFH is the Privately Financed Affordable Senior Housing Program.
Right.
And a lot of developers who do senior housing, they want to use the heirs bonus. And so we created a way to facilitate as well, if it's going to be private land, privately financed. And the developers have been using it. And so what these, I guess Metropolitan Realty is more like the broker. I don't think that they're the actual developer or the owner, but I don't know. I've never worked with them. But what they're saying is that they intend to do 3 buildings. I think one of them is a rehab. The other 2 are new construction in your district, using PFAS and heirs. And again, what it does is it's not a funding program. HPD does not provide funding for this. It's also, I don't always like the phrase, but it's as of right. It's not discretionary. So it's one of those situations where if these guys, fill out the forms right, follow the rules, do what they're supposed to do, then they will be able to use this benefit. Again, there's no HPD money going into these projects. And so they have to notify the community board, which they did, and you then invited them to come and explain their project, which is fine. We strongly encourage that. So that's the essence of it. Again, heirs is a zoning benefit that developers can use when they want to do senior housing. Our SARA program, SARA, which is funding from HPD to do senior housing, developers generally will use heirs as well. But then it's separate if they're getting private finance, that they wanted to get the benefit of it as well. And so that's what this is really about, is that they're fulfilling the requirement to come and present to you for informational purposes. You don't need to, there's no action required. And so that's really what it's about. I will say it because you should know this, that HPD, then the city decided that the use of PFAS, while we do want to encourage more senior housing, and our SARA program is highly subscribed. A lot of developers, nonprofit developers, have applied for our SARA program for money to build senior housing. We were finding that in too many cases that people were using PFAS, the private finance, when maybe that wasn't really the best place to do that. And so the decision was made that the PFAS program will end June 30th. And so these will be among the last amount of senior housing being built through this program. Heirs, the zoning benefit from heirs, will continue with the ones that are financed by the city, like through our SARA program. And so that's why these developers are anxious to close by June 30th, so they can still take advantage of the program. So you won't be seeing probably any more, or certainly not many more PFAS coming into your district.
I said, this is Paula. What was the A in PFAS rep for? Property,
Okay, again,
privately financed.
Privately financed, affordable senior housing.
Affordable. Okay, affordable.
And the heirs, AIRS, is affordable independent residence for seniors.
Paula,
Yes.
you got another question?
I just wanted to ask one question. If it's no financial benefit, what is the benefit for the building to get? What is it benefiting to go through
It's a
the
zoning
program?
benefit,
It's not
zoning
fin-
bonus.
Oh, the zoning.
Yeah.
So what does that mean? They could put it. I'm sorry. What does that mean? They could put it where they built the housing. It has to be put into. I don't understand what the zoning.
No, I think they, and again, I can't spell it exactly. They probably get a little more square footage.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right, so the fact that they didn't come to the meeting and present, would that affect their, I don't think it would, but I'm just asking, would that affect their being in, their eligibility to be in the program? Because
No,
if you,
they're required to notify the community board, which they did.
and that's just it, because of as of right property?
Yeah, there's
Okay.
no zoning, there's no rezoning involved here. They're not changing it from, I don't even know what the zones are. They're not changing it from an R6 to an R7 or anything like that.
Oh, okay, thank you. Are there any other questions, or are there any hands raised?
Yes, Paula, I have some concerns. Though I know it's privately funded and there's no resolutions needed because there's no change in zoning. I think that it's still a slap in the face of this community just because they notified us. And I blame HPD on this one, because they should have told them, yes, you should be making a presentation to the community. Because how many of those senior apartments that they're making
Going to our
we
community.
qualify for? And you can't answer that because you're not familiar with the program. There should have been somebody familiar with the program on air.
I don't know what
Here with
you're
us.
asking, Bobby.
What I'm saying is, normally any HPD or any development that comes on, we always ask to see what would be the share of the community, for the community. This is senior housing. So now that it's senior housing, how many of our seniors would be eligible to get this and get and go become, like you got the what Paula and everybody's always upset about with the selection of apartments for our residents. We don't know who's going to be moving in there.
And
They're saying it's seniors. It could be seniors with substance abuse problems. We don't know. We don't know. And so they should have at least come to us to talk to us about it. And there should have been somebody from HPD that's so familiar with the program to talk to us about it. I
don't think there's much more to be told to you. I certainly would encourage, I certainly feel that particularly because you would ask them to come, that they should. But again, there's no legal requirement to do so. If there's a funding involved, like a Sarah program or Ella or Mix and Match, all those programs, then we do require them to come, and you know that.
I know that, but still, they should have been at least for the community, because the community, how do we know the community is going to benefit from this? We don't.
Can I say something,
Because
Mr.
as
Chair?
of right,
Time out, Altagracia, wait a second, I haven't finished.
But to help you in that question.
I thank you, but I just want everybody to understand. I think, and Paula, I need for you to see how you're going to do this, but I think that we need to have the councilman send a letter to Department of Buildings, and not to give these people any permits until they come and sit with us.
Yeah, because the zoning is adding extra footage, he said, right?
Yeah. First of all, the
So,
zoning is
I'm
adding extra footage, but more importantly, we don't know exactly. We know that it's going to be senior housing, but what kind of senior housing? Is it senior housing for the vets? Is it senior housing for people with substance abuse problems?
Homeless.
Is it senior, is it senior housing homeless? We don't know. That's what needs to be answered.
So
And
could
so
they do that? Could they go in and put?
I propose that at the executive committee, you make the presentation. I will make my statement, and and I will see what we can do. But I definitely would ask our city council member to step in on our behalf and send a letter to the Department of Buildings and state we do not want any Community Board 2 does not wish any permits to be established for the construction of these houses until they speak to us. And if it passes June 30th, that's their fault, not ours.
Can I ask a question? In this type of development, for as of right, there's no community preference, is it?
No,
Okay, thank you. All right, anyone else had a question? I know.
Yo.
Okay, so Altagracia, you next. Go ahead, Altagracia.
Okay, baby. Thank you. Let me tell you something, Mr. Crespo. And that side that you were discussing now, that's one of the things I'm fighting all the time in the street. You know why they don't do and what you asking and what the community needs to know? Because I found out the lot of the people living in our community doing buildings, taking the money, and they don't let the community know what's going on because they got some preference. Where the HCD housing, the government, the land and committee meeting, all those people, they got some amount of money they give you to those landowners to bring in people who they wanted to move in those buildings. Because I'm one of the managers and people that got to build them, knowing this side and other side, they told me that. They do a deal and they pay them the money they supposed to get and extra money in the hand to give it to put it on this one, and they help all this community, but they don't want to deal with this community.
You're right. So Paula,
Coalition for gentrification. That's how they do it.
yeah.
Okay, so I noted that. Is there anyone else who has something to say about this particular issue? Okay, none being heard. We're going to move on to old business. Is there any old business that needs to be talked about?
What about the landlord? They're going to come back to the meeting? They're supposed to be there today, right?
Who?
Or the landlord of those buildings around here.
They were put on the agenda with the hopes of bringing a presentation, but as you heard Mr. Weinstein state that they don't have to. So since they're meeting a deadline for June, I'm assuming.
No, Paula, she's talking about all of the management.
She's talking about the forum.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. No, I'm sorry. I thought you was talking about the company. So no, what happened with that meeting? Do you guys mind if I discuss it for a minute?
Go ahead.
Okay, so we had the meeting. It was very productive, and what was discussed at the meeting, it was basically for safety and health issues, especially for the seniors in the buildings that are run by PRC, SEPCO, Waycrest, Dugard, and Banana Kelly. So most of the representatives came from each management company, along with the community board, the 41st precinct, Department of Homeless Services was a rep, and there was someone else there. I don't remember. Anywho,
HPD was there. Ted Weinstein was there with us. Thank you, Ted. Thank you.
Yes, and HPD. So what happened, Altagracia, was that we came up with a solution that we have to have another meeting, and that at that other meeting, we needed other agencies to be involved, like the Department of Homeless Services with the mental health component, so that we can find out ways to get, the vagrancy or the people who don't live in the building and properly get them services, because the police cannot put them out the building. They can tell them to leave the building, but once they leave and they go back, it's just going to be an ongoing thing. So we needed to get other agencies that can help the situation where we can get a permanent answer as to how we can resolve the issue of people going into the buildings that don't live there, safety with these security making checks with NYPD, helping security with doing when they have calls, and also with keeping people out of the laundry rooms and using drugs and smoking.
Excuse me. I hear in the football meeting last week they supposed to be May 5th. Everybody was in the meeting because they supposed to be there.
You heard
That's what I hear last week.
They did show up, Altagracia, but this is what, now we're going to do a follow-up meeting, a follow-up forum as to what was discussed that day.
But I understand that the today is the one that you put in everything together.
No. What happened was I said in May's meeting, I was going to discuss the outcome of what happened in that meeting.
Okay.
Not
okay.
that everybody was going to come to May's meeting. What I said is I was going to discuss the outcome.
I said that all those people that you said that you were talking, I understand that those people supposed to be in the housing meeting today, and they can explain and say what you know what that you talking about and this and that. I understand that was for today in the housing meeting.
No. That was a mistake. I don't know where you heard that from, but I
No,
said when
I hear
initially,
when in the football meeting when the chair said that everybody was in the meeting and the football meeting last week, they're supposed to be attending at the meeting today. That's what
No,
I understand.
here's what I said.
Okay.
This is what I was talking about was Metropolitan Realty, the ones that we were just talking about, the 3 buildings, that they have to come before the board today. Now, as to the follow-up for the forum, we have not established a date yet, and we're inviting other people to the forum, which is the DA's office and
Department of Homeless Services
Department of Homeless Services and
mental health.
And mental health. Those agencies are going to be invited to our next meeting of the forum. We are going to come out with an open letter after that. Once we can establish a solution to the problem, we will come out with an open letter, present it to the board. Once the board approves it, we will have all principals, meaning all the management companies, the police department, the city agencies, the board, everybody sign it, and we're going to send it to the mayor's office.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so is there any old business?
I think it's new now.
Okay, no, not being heard. No, she wanted to have that discussion on
Yeah,
what happened at the meeting. That wasn't, I don't know, it could be old business, but I didn't think it was. Okay, so is there any new business? Anyone wants to share any new business? Okay, what about announcements?
I got something on the new business. I just want to thank this committee for being proactive with this Metropolitan Realty exemption. I'm happy that Ted, and I appreciate Ted coming on to explaining to us what's the process. And I think it's unfortunate that they can receive funding from the city without any community support or community input for that matter. So I want to thank the chair for being proactive with that.
Thank you, Ralph.
And Paula, I forgot on the old business, I'm sorry. We did mention about Maggie's building and we need to reach out to the congressman's office so like that we can push HUD to get that management into that meeting of the forum.
Okay, right.
We got to do that because otherwise, what's the sense of creating a solution for all the other buildings? And that's the only building we don't have a solution for.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Paula, I had an announcement.
Okay. Hi, Miles. How are you?
Hi there, everyone. Nice to hear your
Miles.
voices. You guys are on it tonight. I wanted to just let everyone know that we have our monthly cleanup event next Saturday at 8 a.m. to 11 a.m. at the Bid. If you want to attend, just let me know so I know how many donuts and coffees to get. And I hope you can make time. I know the council member is going to be partnering with us on this event, so it should be good fun. Thanks, guys.
What's the time again?
8 to 11
Yes, thanks.
on Saturday, May 15th.
Thank you.
Okay, no announcements I'm hearing. Okay, so we can just adjourn this meeting. Can I have someone make a motion to adjourn?
Ralph,
You don't need a motion because there's no quorum. You don't need a
under
motion.
the agenda, we had a couple of attachments under the agenda.
Oh,
Oh, I didn't see that.
Yes, I'm sorry, that's my fault. We do have these permit applications that came in for the landmark preservation. We always get these. Figure we'll let people know. So these are just buildings in the landmark. They need any landmark. These two in particular, they need permits to do any type of construction or remodeling. So these are the two that came in this time. We also got some stuff from HPD. HPD is gonna have a seminar coming up regarding pest and mold. I'm sorry, it's just running a little pest and mold and owner's guide to indoors. It's a free Zoom meeting and it's hosted by HPD.
Wait, can I get the,
I'm sorry, yes, that was HPD that's holding that. And it's May 11th from 6 to 8. If you need information, you can reach out to us for it.
All right, thank you.
I'll send this with the agenda out as soon as the meeting's over.
Right.
Thank you.
And then we have some training and workshops that are coming up from the Department of Health, Healthy Homes Education. So there's a bunch of them coming up with different titles. Reach out to the office and we can send this out if anybody wants it.
Okay, thank you.
And also, they're all posted on our websites or on our social media.
Okay. Was that it?
That's it.
All right, so thank you. We're gonna adjourn this meeting, and I saw you guys at executive.
Happy Mother's Day, everyone.
Thanks so much.
Happy Mother's Day
Happy
to all the
Mother's Day.
ladies.
Yes.
Happy Mother's
Thank you.
Day,
Happy
yes.
Mother's Day.
All of you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Good night, everyone.
Happy Mother's Day to everybody.
Good night.
And gals, because